our local community, and has extensive roots here in the Chicagoland area. So again, one of the things we talk about, I think the company rally cry that's important at AbbVie is making a remarkable impact on the lives of patients. So I've been there 16 years, and I will say that we keep that patient as a North Star, and that's something that we, strive to do with our therapies. When I joined the company, Abbott, way back when in the early 2000s, I would liken us to a more Me Too company that had not necessarily novel or rare disease types of products. But now, as we've grown and expanded and looked in other therapeutic areas like oncology, immunology, neuroscience, we really look for those products that will improve the quality of patients' lives. That have a long-lasting impact on how individual functions and how our products and our therapies can complement what they do, putting people back to work and giving people the quality of life as well. So that's one thing that I'm probably most proud of, that it's not just about pills and pens at AbbVie, it's about something more. So again, going back to our earliest formation as a healthcare company dating back over 130 years ago, literally there was a Dr. Abbott who ran an apothecary, and he started, Abbott Laboratories. And we launched in 2013. And again, we are well into the tens of millions of patients, that we impact with our therapies. Again, mission, I think every company, has a mission, but one of the things that's differed about AbbVie is when we talk about being patient-focused and biopharmaceutical. So not necessarily just, your traditional, I would say, more mainstream, pharma company. Biopharma, means that you are looking, for products and entities and therapeutic areas where you have a best-in-class therapy. And I think that's what makes us a little bit, different and unique, that we also have invested as much money in R&D as we do in sales and marketing and, execution against, plan and returning value to the stockholders. We really look to be patient-driven, focused on, those rare compounds and novel diseases, that are best in class. Literally, one of the things I see about AbbVie as being different, and I've been with J&J in the past. I was with Takeda. As Karen said, I've got a number of years in healthcare coming up here, close to 20 at AbbVie. That's something that I feel like we do a little bit differently than some of the other places that I've been. Mm-hmm. So I know one of the questions was around our global, footprint. And Dr. Love, I think I read the statistic that you said 70+% of all manufacturing occurs in China. So yeah, I actually did read your pre-work. So you'll be surprised to see that of our state-of-the-art facilities, we don't have any in China. And again, you have to remember, we are a young company, so we don't necessarily have the same presence. We aren't considered a top-tier pharmaceutical entity in China, but it is the second largest market, for us in the world. So huge untapped potential from us. And I even was able to find a slide that showed you both Allergan footprint as well as AbbVie, because I know supply chain is something that is very, very important. And I will say, among other things, that during this COVID crisis, we have had workers, going in, to manufacturing facilities the entire time with the correct personal protective equipment. We've had, individuals who have tirelessly worked so that there isn't any disruption, with regard to our products or shortages. I have not heard anything in the other therapeutic areas specific to, immunology. We have, I believe, continued to deliver those, life-saving products. A lot of our products are chronic in nature, so they're not necessarily acute, inpatient products. So once a patient starts, a therapy like a Humira or a biologic, they are largely going to be on it for the majority of their lives. So we have not had any hiccups with regard to supply chain whatsoever. And this will just show you some of the places around the world. Specifically, I'll point to Puerto Rico, where Humira is manufactured. And an interesting fun fact about Puerto Rico is that AbbVie is the #1 supplier of electricity on the island of Puerto Rico. And we are among the lead, if not the #1 employer on the island of Puerto Rico, because that's where Humira, one of the sites where Humira is manufactured. When you have the largest pharmaceutical in the world, you need to have redundancy, within your supply chain as well. So in addition to Lake County, some of the other places across the globe strategically, we've got redundancy in our supply chain. But I thought you would, find that interesting that we are among the #1 employer. And when the hurricane hit in Puerto Rico a few years ago and devastated the island, AbbVie committed $100 million to the island of Puerto Rico as well. And those employees literally left their homes to ensure that the manufacturing facility did not sustain, any damage. So not only does it have, a significant impact on the economy there in Puerto Rico, but it engenders, I think, a lot of goodwill, with the people of the island. And I thought that was a pretty, moving story to hear that employees would leave their homes, with their families to ensure that their workplace, would be safe and that the supply of Humira there, was not disrupted at all. And here are in green some of the Allergan manufacturing locations as well. So as you can see, between the green and the gray, a pretty, robust, significantly geographically dispersed supply chain for two, large pharmaceutical entities, that are now all under the AbbVie banner. So again, I'd never seen, this slide in totality until I, was able to scrounge up a little bit. So you can see the impact of the difference that AbbVie makes on a global footprint when you're talking about healthcare delivery, more specifically manufacturing and distribution and supply chain. Mm-hmm. So again, this week, literally, it was announced, this week that Allergan and AbbVie are one company. It gives us a #1 position in immunology, in the immunology space, #2 in hematologic oncology. AbbVie, again, 4 years ago, was not an oncology company. Now they're #2 in hematologic, which are blood cancers. And those two products are Imbruvica and Venclexta, that, again, treat a lot of rare disease and are life-saving, has a number of indications. One of the things that you'll find about some pharmaceutical companies, specifically AbbVie, is that you have one drug, and that drug can treat a number of disorders. So they call a drug like Humira a pipeline within itself, because it has 10 indications. Please don't make me name all 10, but it treats rheumatoid arthritis, ankylosing spondylitis. It treats psoriatic arthritis, psoriasis, uveitis. So again, this is all one molecule that is approved to treat a number of different, disorders. So if AbbVie is targeting a market, an emerging market like China, what they will do is they will go in, with an approved indication, for the largest area, of business, of opportunity, in a country, like China, that is very, very important and is a growth engine for us. It's important for AbbVie to have a global presence because right now, 65% of all our revenues are generated in the U.S. And, that means 35% of those, other revenues are generated globally. And we don't want to be in balance. It's important, if you're going to have a global presence, to be able to treat patients in need, wherever they are. And certainly they exist outside of the United States. Our leadership position in women's health, aesthetics as well, now that we have Botox and cool sculpting and all of those, I would say, selective selective areas that that our medical aesthetics colleagues can treat. I know my wife is super excited to get some cool sculpting at a discount, as well as Botox. But Botox also has aesthetic indications as well as some other medical indications as well. Botox is actually indicated for the prevention of migraines. So there are some definite synergies with some of our pipeline and some of the products. A number one position in global hepatitis C, and now a leadership position in eye care. And again, this is all this week. So I'm certainly excited about some of the markets and some of the segments now that AbbVie has a leadership position in, and now that we have a sister company, now a parent company that we'll be able to leverage. So here are all the diversified specialty companies, within AbbVie. And specialty is important because, again, we try not to be niched. We try not to come into a space to be the third, fourth, or fifth entrant, to make money. Certainly the goal in a publicly, traded, publicly held company is to return, stockholder value. But if you look across all of these indications, they may not be, common names to everyone, but these are all significant, opportunities of growth. And you can see at a company like AbbVie, you can have immunology could be a standalone $20 billion company, as well as oncology, aesthetics, neuroscience. These are all now AbbVie, companies, which makes us a very, very attractive, diversified pharma company. Dr. Love, I know I've been talking pretty straight through here. I'll just stop if there are any questions or if there's anything that you'd like to key in on that I've said. I see you taking notes over there, so I'll check in with you before I keep going here.
Okay. So are you responsible for the Allergan product in terms of the pipeline, or are you responsible for a particular region, like in the Midwest, for that product? How does that work?
So my particular area that I'm responsible for is the first one. If you see immunology, and my area focus is the Midwest. So I'm the region director for the Midwest, which includes Ohio, Michigan, Kentucky, Illinois, Indiana, Wisconsin, North Dakota, South Dakota. I have to think about this as I go right to left on all of the areas that I'm responsible for. I'm very, very blessed, very fortunate to have the largest book of business of any regional director, any field sales leader, in the entire company. I think my book of business is right around $2.2 billion. And I only focus in the rheumatoid arthritis space.
Okay.
And the products in the portfolio that we promote are Humira and a new product to RA, we call rheumatoid arthritis RA, Rinvoq. So that's where my sales team, focuses all of their efforts between RA, and then you have, also other indications, as I said, psoriatic arthritis and ankylosing spondylitis in immunology. But I'm all immunology focused, specifically in the Midwest. I've been doing this role since February. And before that, I was one of the individuals responsible for the Allergan integration. So my role in operations, and I know you've had folks talk about operations, was how do we bring, these two companies together, our 2,000 plus reps, sales professionals, and their 4,000 plus sales professionals. So a lot of my role before I took over this sales responsibility was merging of these, two companies.
Okay. Okay. And for Allergan, was that originated in Ireland? Because there was a situation with the Irish High Court.
Yes. So the deal took so long to confirm because they're very strict Irish takeover laws, which I think sometimes is a code word for you have to write somebody in Ireland a big check in order to, take over the responsibility, for their baby. But it is an Irish, based company. And I will say that, again, my opinion, I'm certainly not a corporate officer, but I can do math. They had an offer, I believe, more than a year or two ago for about almost 3 times of what AbbVie was able to acquire them for. So from a strategic standpoint, it was a great fit for them, and certainly a great opportunity for us as we look at this deal. I look at this deal as a product like Humira loses its exclusivity. So, what that means is you have a certain window with which you can market your drug commercially, and you keep all the revenue before other entities, entrants, come into that particular market. I believe this is a good deal for us because we generate enough cash flow that we can pay off this acquisition before Humira loses its exclusivity. And then we're still left, with a very, very robust portfolio of not just immunology, but all of these other areas: women's health, allergan aesthetics, neuroscience, that they are leaders. They are among best in class. Eye care, these are all best in class businesses. So AbbVie has acquired a phenomenal pipeline with a company like Allergan that literally all we had to do was, write a check, and it certainly had to, pass approval of the SEC. But this was a very, very, I think, strategic, fit for AbbVie, so that when I'm retired, one of these days, that my pension will still be intact.
That's so, Tony, do you see, in terms of the global markets, is Allergan the pipeline into the global markets? Because I noticed you said, let me go back here. 65% of the products are manufactured in the U.S. Is that
Yes.
right?
Well,
So
65% of the revenues of AbbVie's revenues
okay.
are out of the U.S. And I would probably say the majority, it's probably less than 50% of our manufacturing production capability and capacity is in the U.S. So yes, this definitely gives us a pipeline. So that's a great question. It gives us a pipeline in, as I'm looking at, this slide here, 1, 2, 3, 4. It gives us a pipeline in 4 areas, quite honestly, that we were not in a leadership position. AbbVie right now is known as an immunology company, first and foremost. There's another product that one of my colleagues, I believe, is on the phone, that I would be remiss if I didn't mention Skyrizi. That's another blockbuster product in the dermatology, immunology area, specifically in psoriasis. Again, another best-in-class entrant. Rinvoq is one of the products I'm responsible for in RA, another best-in-class Humira-like entrant. But I believe our shortcoming was in our lack of breadth across other therapeutic areas where we didn't have a leadership position. And again, I'll go back to, my shameless plug that we are only a 7-year-old company. So to be able to accomplish this, to have the financial resources, to have the right strategy and vision. And when you talk about a deal, like this, literally it's not just your president, CEO, and CFO, it's your chief medical officer, who has a 10-year plan on how to get us, literally, and I talked to our president and vice chairman, chief medical officer. He had a 10-year plan on how you replace, a Humira, how do you replace an asset like Humira, who's responsible for $20 billion of revenue worldwide. I mean, so this is, as you can see, all of these other areas, there's no single product that has, um, the depth and the revenues of Humira, but certainly, and if you think about strategic markets globally, oncology, aesthetics, eye care, virology, women's health, these are all areas of growth that are going to be not just exclusive to the U.S., but globally as well.
So you equate women's health with Botox? No, I'm just kidding.
No. So no. No, my wife has taught me better than that.
But I do have a question in terms of Puerto Rico. If you are looking to expand in other countries, are you willing to provide the infrastructure for them so that you can build manufacturing plants? Because providing electricity, that's amazing to them, and
yes,
employment as well. So is AbbVie positioned to do that for other countries during their expansive process?
No, that's a great question. And I was reading about China before the call, because I know that was, one of your areas of focus. And when you come into a company like a country like China, with that many people, with the density of their population, they're going to have unmet needs in all of these areas. You really have to establish yourself with the government and the ministry before you start selling.
Absolutely.
And I'm sure you probably covered that, but China has a healthcare vision for 2030, and a lot of it is predicated upon building the right infrastructure so that you can deliver care concurrently while you are selling, while you're taking, I don't want to say taking advantage, seizing the opportunity, to treat some of these critical areas of need for the population. So I believe the two are synonymous, that you can't just kind of go set up your lemonade stand until you get the permits, until you employ people, until you show that you can manufacture your products responsibly. And if you think about the costs, the setup, and everything included in that, it may take till 2030, until AbbVie is recognized as a top tier pharmaceutical company, because it'll take you that long, to build up all of the necessary infrastructure to have, the type of footprint that you need across all of these lines of business. Because from a supply chain standpoint, you never want, in my opinion, for one of your distant markets, for one of your, could be our second largest market in the world, you never want to be a net importer always of all those products. And it gives you some redundancy, and it's very strategic if you can have a presence in a country, like that, where you're manufacturing and you're putting people, to work, and there's an incredible, I think, sense of pride in the culture as well, that people work, in and for a company that is thoughtful enough to have a presence there in that country.
China has, well, actually, it's an old Asian phrase. It's spelled Guanxi, Guanxi. It's the ties that bind. So it's it's not just the deal. It's yes, the infrastructure, because it's for the collective, for the good of society as a whole. So that's going to be an interesting thing.
Yes.
It'll be interesting. I'm going to ask some of my other students if they have questions.
I've got a few more slides. Again, I'll just stop, here. If there aren't any questions, I'll keep going.
Okay, I just want to open it up. Well, not yet. I don't see anybody on the chat box. So
okay.
You can keep going, yes.
So another fun fact, because I always like to give you, fun facts. Our CEO, Rick Gonzalez, was interviewed on Mad Money by Jim Cramer. And Jim Kramer is a migraine sufferer. He's actually president and a spokesperson, for the International Migraine Society. And Jim Kramer said, again, off the cuff, not scripted. He said to our CEO just this week, and it's actually in the 11-minute exchange. He said, Rick, I woke up this morning and I had a terrible migraine. I got up at 3 a.m. and he has oodles of energy, so I could absolutely see somebody like that getting up at 3 a.m. I was going to do my workout, but I absolutely couldn't. But I still have a responsibility, to my team, my staff, and what he does, around, the world, how he has an impact, I believe, on global markets, just with his platform. And he held up a package. And if you look in the middle under neuroscience, it says Ubrelvy. And he said, I took one of these, and he had the unopened package. And he said, I felt better in 40 minutes. Mm-hmm. So there couldn't be a more authentic, shameless plug. And I know just by him saying and recognizing, but if you think about a debilitating disease, and I said that in jest, but if you think about a debilitating disease like a migraine, and having a national spokesperson, talk thoughtfully about his experience, and that's an N of one, but his experience and how that was corrected in 40 minutes. That's where I think the role of pharmaceutical companies, that's the role I believe, that we play, because, somebody like that, somebody like, me, can't have many sick days. My wife is a migraine sufferer. So I thought that was a really incredible testimony to, the power of, a global pharmaceutical company. Also he said, he asked our CEO about earnings relative to the COVID crisis. And I'm sure you all have focused, on the COVID crisis as well. And our CEO said that 50% of our interaction with doctors is virtual already. And that was a surprise to some people. I don't know that the number is that high, but that was a leading indicator, that told me that, we need to be equipped to have connections with customers and meet them where they are, via virtual, via other platforms. So if you think about sending healthy people into potentially sick spaces, or spaces where folks are immunocompromised, what he was signaling to me is, you all better figure out how to have virtual presence, with some of your customers. And that's not just here in the United States, that's across the world, that maybe some of the traditional methods of promoting, to doctors and doctors' offices are going to, require some virtual learning, virtual engagement. We call it non-personal promotion, e-detailing. So I thought that was, a pretty significant statement, when your CEO comes out and says that that may be our new way of working in the future. Let me see. Again, some of our therapeutic areas of focus, mine is immunology. And again, we leverage biologics and small molecules in rheumatology, dermatology, and gastroenterology. And here are some of our medicines that treat, over 1 million patients in 15 indications, worldwide. So AbbVie is known as an immunology company. Mm-hmm. Oncology, I talked a little bit about Imbruvica and Venclexta as well. And here are some of the, areas of focus, that we have in oncology. Neuroscience, and again, you see Botox, Vraylar, Ubrelvy, and Duopa. Botox, Vraylar, and Ubrelvy are all Allergan assets. So it's really exciting that, we now are going to have a leadership position as a neuroscience company. Eye care, again, these are all, traditional standalone Allergan assets that, now we've inherited. I started out my career in sales training, working with the virology team, and now we are the global leader in hepatitis C, which many years ago, I think I started in that business in 2014, and there was no cure, but now there can be a cure in hepatitis C in as little as 8 weeks,
My goodness.
with a global goal of complete elimination of that disease, by 2030. So again, treating unmet needs, and we want to work ourselves out of the Hep C business by, eliminating it entirely by 2030.
Mm-hmm. That's good.
And you talk about, other specialties, GI care, metabolics, and I'm really happy now that we say that we have significant women's health products that are a cornerstone, to making us a women's health company. One of the platforms, one of my personal pillars is mentoring, and certainly mentoring women in business, because I believe they are underrepresented from a leadership, management director level. While we have more women employees at AbbVie, once you get to the director level or above, is where I think you see a deficit among women in leadership. And that's one of the personal platforms, that I've had. I've been very fortunate that every role that I've been in since 2014, I've backfilled my role with a very capable woman leader. And it wasn't necessarily my intent to only, mentor women in business, but that's something that I try to ensure that I do to strengthen the candidate pool of women leaders. And every role that I've gone from, my backfill, has been a capable woman leader that I've hired and developed. So that's something that I really feel strongly and passionate about, because I know leadership is, something that, we all need to be mindful and thoughtful of. And folks on the call, may have questions about how you do that, and, why that's my personal platform. But I think that's something that's critical to our business from a diversity standpoint, from a diversity of thought standpoint, from a representation standpoint. And we tout ourselves as having being among, the top 50 companies for working moms, and having a very, very robust equality, diversity, and inclusion program. But it has to be represented, I feel like, within your leadership as well. So again, if you think about global health, we now, inclusive of our new sister company, now AbbVie, are treating 60 conditions across 30 brands in more than 175 countries. And that really is what I feel like gives you the depth and breadth to say that you are a global health partner, and that you are treating needs, because every society, every business, every healthcare delivery model is different across these specialties. And we don't operate in other countries the way we do in the US. So we enjoy an incredible, strategic advantage because of the delivery of healthcare in US, but not every country's model is like that. So if you're delivering care, if you're the general manager of AbbVie South America, your sales, marketing, training, operations, you have everything. You don't have, this wide cross-functional team, Dr. Love, that we enjoy here in the United States. You're literally as the head of that particular business. Hey, buddy. I'm sorry, we had my wife's dog come in. Ren, you want to say hello?
It's a beautiful dog. Isn't he beautiful?
So what I've learned to do is just join the journey of others. If kids come into the room, put kids on camera. Whoever comes in, he broke in despite the door being closed. Go find mama. Hey, go find mama. Go. Sit down. Listen. All right, he's not going to listen to me, sir.
Carla's met Tai Tai, so she was formally introduced before we started. Okay.
So with that, I will. One of the things I will say I wanted to make sure I talked about with regard to AbbVie Gives Back and corporate responsibility were some of the things that we've done in the midst of this crisis. Some of it was we'd already started certainly an employee fund, but one of the things we did, we were one of the first companies to say that no patient, because of his or her insurance, will go without their medication because of the COVID-19 crisis. And some of our therapies, I'll say, sheepishly, can cost, retail, that's not necessarily what patients pay, up to $30,000, for a course of treatment a year. And we said no one will be without their medication in the midst of the COVID crisis as well. So if we had to bridge you until, you return to work, or if you lost your job, so it's not just a copay program, it's an extension of the way I feel AbbVie, tries to give back, in addition to employee giving, global, week of volunteering, Seek, STEM, other philanthropic, entities. We have an AbbVie, foundation, and then the Employee Assistance Fund. And AbbVie actually matched a number of the contributions if employees wanted to make contributions to their local food bank. We extended that during the COVID crisis. So I feel like we will be remembered, as a company, that stepped up, that donated $35 million, for testing sites, for shelters, for food banks, for mobile hospitals as well. So there are a number of things that I'm certainly proud about with regard to AbbVie and what we've done in response to this global health pandemic.
Puerto Rico. Yeah.
So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions, if there are any specific thoughts or anecdotes or things that I covered that you'd like me to reiterate. It looks like we've got a few minutes here for questions. Hopefully some of these things connected with things that you've been studying, things that you've seen in the classroom, academic setting. I'm happy to answer anything about, my background, a number of the different positions I've held in healthcare across a number of different companies. And, certainly I'm proud of AbbVie, but there are a lot of great companies, out there, J&J included, that I had the opportunity to, start my career there. I was in healthcare operations, distributions. I was with Cardinal Health, that's a leader in pharmaceutical distribution. But I really think, AbbVie, combines a lot of what they need, not only to deliver life-saving products. Again, like I said, it's not just about pills and pens at AbbVie, it's about, people. But our response, to, the pandemic, I think has been exceptional. And we've gotten really, really good feedback that we've led with empathy, we've led with grace, dignity, and we have not, seen this as an opportunity to be profiteers as well.
Questions? I have questions, but I'll wait. Everybody else is quiet tonight. Tony, define biologics for me. What are biologics?
So biologics, can be a human growth hormone or a synthetic replication of something that your body is deficient. So Humira is a biologic. So it's a synthetically produced agent that you inject in your body that helps to either suppress your immune system, or if something is suppressing your immune system, it binds to and will fight that particular that particular defect in your body, whether it's B cells, T cells, TNF alpha. So that's what biologics are, different from a pill because of the way it's produced.
Okay. Okay. Now, AbbVie sounds like a very innovative company, and it's so young. It's so young. How does the organization support the innovation and team development and the culture, those type things?
I believe it does through our therapeutic areas. We're designed in what we call integrated brand teams, IBTs. So each IBT, which includes sales, marketing, medical, operations, all the IBTs are designed to support, the delivery and the execution of a commercial strategy for that particular brand team. So if I'm in immunology, rheumatology, but I've got my marketing colleagues, sales training, marketing analytics, and business insights, everyone is aligned around that particular molecule, that particular entity, and that's why I believe it fosters a culture of inclusivity, as well as, people are very, very singular focused when you work on the same thing, when you see the same people, when you can communicate with them, whether it's virtually or in person. It's really, really good alignment when you can have, that many people focused on one particular therapeutic area.
Mm-hmm. That's good. Thank you. Thank you. Questions? This is a quiet group tonight. I can't believe it. Okay, so last question.
Okay.
What was your most memorable moment in leading your teams? Because you in your bio, you talk about sales excellence and sales training. So what was the most memorable moment or accomplishment in leading teams, in leading your sales team?
I would say, the most memorable moment is, in this particular role when I was first introduced to this team, and knowing what I know now about leadership. I led my first team in the Marine Corps when I was 20 something, and the way you lead certainly changes, over time. Now that I'm, more mature, I won't say old, 50 plus, I'm a little more mature, a little bit more savvy. I have a little bit more, wisdom. Is, I just standing in front of, someone showing, complete humility, being your authentic self, will probably be the most memorable experience I've had within AbbVie. And when I was introduced to my team, I talked to them about coming from humble beginnings.
Mm-hmm.
And I talked about my father, and I talked about being, raised in a very, very tough, area in the inner city. And I believe I connected people because I was, extremely transparent, extremely humble, and, really showed probably, the essence of, why things are important to me, not what is important to me. My personal why is inspiring people to walk in purpose. So when you can show that and articulate that in a meaningful way that isn't sales and marketing and doesn't take a whole bunch of slides, like I did tonight, when you can show people, by pictures and just talk with them about inspiring people to walk in purpose, that's probably going to be, hands down my career highlight. And I will also say that probably you asked me for one thing, not necessarily one thing. Right now, I've got a good winning streak going on. Everyone that I've hired since I came into the home office in 2013. So I was a sales training manager, and I've hired, in I think the last count since 2013, I've hired 53 employees, and every single one is still at AbbVie, and no employee that I hired is in the job that I hired them for.
Oh, that's incredible.
So I have a question about that. So what would you attribute as far as like your interviewing technique and hiring practices, what would you attribute that success to?
A lot of failure, a lot of bad hires, in the past, when I was younger and I was probably more enamored with someone's credentials than their body of work. So I look for, Kim, a body of work. I look for, have you been successful? Have you taken on challenges? Have you been able, to differentiate yourself because of performance? And has the impact of your work infected others? And I mean that in a thoughtful way. Has it infected? Has it permeated? Is it distinguishable? Is it repeatable? And if you're on a team, what was your contribution? And I really spend a lot of time, when I'm interviewing people, asking them questions about the quality, of their work. And I always, and I will tell you this, I always think of a question to make people think strategically. So if there's one interview technique that I would say is I will give them a business case that they had not prepared for. I give them a pen and a whiteboard and just take me through your thought process. No right or wrong answer. I only want to know how you think, because I believe strategic thinking is probably one of the hardest things to do, which is why I love marketers, which is why I failed as a marketer in my very, very short stint in my career. Ascertaining folks' strategic thinking and hiring people with a career body of work when you can find, that, if that is available to you, have been the things I think that have served me well in this current winning streak that I'm on.
Well, good. Congratulations. And this was a very thorough presentation. So thank you for presenting tonight. May I ask one more question?
Sure, absolutely. Yes.
So we use this terminology, best in class, world class. Can you give us the background on how that's measured in the pharmaceutical industry?
So best in class is interesting. So that may be subjective. So I appreciate the question. Blockbuster status means you sell $1 billion of that thing in a calendar year. And best in class, in my opinion, and again, it is subjective, is do you have multiple assets that sell $1 billion? And that's not an AbbVie definition. Blockbuster status is, your asset, your molecule, your therapy sells $1 billion. That is the definition of blockbuster status in pharma. Do you have multiple products that achieve that level of sales and the number of patients, not only in dollars and in the number of patients, that they impact? So that's when I refer to best in class, that's what best in class means. And it can be cumulative because of sales, because of patients, and the number of molecules, entities that you have in a particular therapeutic area. Like, we are the world's number one immunology company. And that's because of the products that we have and the sales that we generate in that particular area of study. So I hope I answered your question. Good, very, very, very good question, though.
Yeah. And it's not unusual for companies to have goals to be world-class in service or best in class. A lot of times there are metrics that are set up by which, customer service needs to meet certain criteria or sales needs to meet certain criteria. So I didn't know if there was some type of internal metric that was set up to ascertain, to obtain a best in class type of
Yeah,
rating.
that's a good question. It's sales and market share. So we are also, we define ourselves by the market of other products that compete in that particular therapeutic area. So again, if I go to immunology, AbbVie is the #1 market share leader if you look at all of the categories of immunology, not only from sales, but from a market share. So that's a good component. That is a qualification. You can't just say I'm best in class and have a 5% market share of a $10 billion market opportunity. It's a combination of sales and market share. And there are different games of you know, what you can play, in-play share. We're number one in patients who switch. I mean, so there's a lot of gamesmanship in that as well. And I won't tell you that, sometimes we will fall into, we are the number one fastest growing. I'm sure you've seen ads, like that before, but it's more comprehensive. And I like to feel like, we try to be fairly objective when we, talk about best in class and leaders in specific categories.
Excellent questions. Excellent questions. Are there other questions? I'm shocked. Tony, you're getting off easy.
Good, good. Easy is fine. I'm surprised. I'm surprised
It
Diana
was a
Clopton.
thorough presentation, though. It was a very, very thorough presentation.
Yes,
Thank you. I'm surprised Diana Clopton didn't ask me a question.
She's kicked out, but she's on now. She's just not saying anything. But any other questions, anyone? Okay, let me check the chat bar. Make sure everybody's okay.
Eddie and I are thinking of a question. Who was one of the more recent people you recruited into AbbVie?
That would be you. And I'm counting on you not to break my record.
I'm counting on not breaking your record.
Diana will be presenting on marketing and integration. I think she is scheduled for the 22nd of June. I'm gonna have to confirm that. Yeah.
Well, I will say, I'll just tell a quick anecdote about Diana. We tried for probably 2 years to get her into AbbVie, and they were looking for folks with marketing experience that she had, check. They were looking for folks from premier marketing schools, i.e. Northwestern, Chicago, MBAs, check. They were looking, for folks who had substantive brand experience, which she had from a flagship company, check. And it was like, why can't we get, this well-qualified person, into AbbVie? And I will say, you got to have a sponsor. You got to have somebody who is willing to, take no, to say, to be told no, to, position you, to different leaders. And we got Diana corrected to right place, right time, right leader for her to, get into a company like AbbVie, in my opinion, which she should have been in. We should be very, very blessed to have her, which we are. But, sometimes if you're trying to, find a way into a company, it's about your network. I'm very fortunate that I was very well networked and got her to the right opportunity. So if you're targeting a specific company, if you're targeting an industry, use this time to build your network. I freely accept any LinkedIn connection. I say to anyone, my network is your network. I try to be extremely giving with regard to my time and anything that I've learned or acquired along the way. So that was a testimony. And once I'm told no, you've kind of poked the bear a little bit, with me, because there's no reason why we shouldn't have, qualified, again, women leaders. That's one of my personal passions is around women leaders and women, in business. Not that I wouldn't freely mentor, anyone else, but when I'm told no, it gives me, no to me is an option for that day. That probably, resonates to any sales, folks we have. No to me is an option only for that day. And it eventually, usually we'll find a workaround to get good qualified people and who, produce exceptional results.
Tony, I was sharing that with Kim because she's positioned at Judson to do great things, and people are looking at her, and she markets herself very, very well, and I'm very proud of what she's doing. She just presented herself with gangbusters, and so she was legend before anybody met her, and so that was that was amazing that she stepped in that position in project management. And so I'm just very proud of all the students that are here and represented. And I am very proud of you, and I thank you for your time, because it's not easy to just take off on a Friday night. I know a lot of the students have homework, but you know,
Sure.
they joined in and you've joined in as well. And so I just thank everybody that's here tonight, and we will continue our Friday night talks next week. Next week, we will have Abby McCormick, and she comes from an HR background. So she's just going to talk about human resources and the challenges during COVID-19. This was an extraordinary presentation. So thank you, everyone. And if you
Awesome
don't have any
job, Tony.
questions, yes, we're going to
No,
close. Yes.
thank you. Thank you. I will leave you with one thought. And again, we could use Kim as an example. The interview starts, you know, before you show up. So your network, your reputation, your brand, you know, all of the interactions and encounters that you have with people matter, every single one, because, you know, ultimately, I always say that when I'm in an interview, I will never out interview another candidate. So I always have to count on my body of work. I always have to count on my reputation, you know, my brand, my interaction, the substantive projects that I've had and held, you know, with people, because I feel like I could never be out interviewed for a job that I'm qualified for if I've done all those other things, you know, all those other steps along the way, you know, to prepare myself.
Very good. Very good. Lillian, you're very quiet tonight. And Jennifer and Sienna.
Yes, I'm just
Carla?
listening and learning.
Listening, learning. Thank you so much for plugging in tonight. I really appreciate it. And we are really working hard to strengthening the organizational leadership brand at Judson, because when we talk about leadership, we focus too much on the soft skills, but there's much more to organizational leadership than communication and collaboration. But those are the words that come out. It's a very good construct. So how do we undergird it with the science, because it's the science of leadership, it's leadership as community and all of those things. So God has placed it on my heart to just, hey, let's take this brand and strengthen it and go forth from there. So thank you everyone. And I look forward to talking to you guys next week.
Thank you, Dr.
Thank you.
Good
Thanks for
evening.
having me.
Bye.
Thank you, Tony.
Take care. Good night. Bye-bye.